I had a morning glory shout out this morning as I was walking along the Potomac. I didn't get a chance to yell evening grace to someone, but they recognized me. The public gave me a morning glory. Good to see them. Good to have you with me on this Wednesday. I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the oral argument today in Oklahoma statewide charter school board versus Drummond. You see, the Oklahoma charter school board refused to charter a Roman Catholic charter school, saying that it would violate the Establishment Clause. That's lousy thinking. I believe that will be reversed. I've got a lot of the oral argument for you to hear, and I believe that St. Isidore's will be, in the end, upheld, constitutional, and funded based upon Trinity Lutheran, Espinoza, Fulton, a whole bunch of cases that have been decided that I teach every year. And maybe we will finally get to where we overturn the only bad part of the legacy of Justice Scalia, Employment Division versus Smith. That's coming up. I want to begin, though, with a cabinet meeting that Donald Trump held today. It's a 100-day cabinet meeting, going around to find out what's been going on. He calls on basically everybody in the course of this. Let's start with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth for his report card, cut number 26.
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, Mr. President, I think we're controversial because we're over the target. And like so many things, Mr. President, you inherited a demoralized military that couldn't recruit, that was perceived as weak after what happened in Afghanistan and elsewhere because of Joe Biden. And what we have seen since your election and the inauguration has been nothing short of a recruiting renaissance. Decades, it hasn't been decades since we've seen this kind of recruiting in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force. The men and women of America want to join the United States military led by President Donald Trump.
And the police, by the way.
Absolutely.
And fire. I always mention the fire, but the police and fire, likewise they have waiting lists now, and 6 months ago was a disaster.
Truly historic. We can barely absorb the volume and retention as well. Men and women in the military who don't want to get out now that they have a real commander-in-chief. We're reinforcing standards. We're going to be fit, not fat, in our formations. We welcome back all the folks that were forced out because of the COVID mandate. We've ripped wokeness out of the military, sir, DEI, trans, and it's Fort Benning and Fort Bragg again at the DOD. We're rebuilding the military, sir. The Golden Dome is well underway. F-47, reassuring allies and deterring enemies. We found nearly $6 billion in DOGE savings that we're going to reinvest, including $50 billion from the Biden administration focused on things like climate that have nothing to do with lethality and warfighting. And we will have, as you said, sir, the first $1 trillion budget that we plan to spend wisely on behalf of our warfighters. From day
It's a
one,
great
sir,
first report. Donald Trump had his own assessment of his first 100 days. Cut number 28 is Donald Trump assessing the 100 days.
We've just completed what many consider to be the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and we're just getting started. Things are happening that are amazing, and I would not say it if it weren't fact. In a few short weeks, we've achieved the most secure border in American history by far, 99.9%, which is a number that nobody thought was doable. Biden thought you had to go back to the legislature to get legislation passed in order to create a secure border. You didn't. You just had to have the right president and the right people working it. Congratulations, by the way, and to Tom. For 2 months in a row, we have set the all-time records for the lowest number of illegal border crossings ever recorded. The number of illegal border crossers released into the United States is down 99.999%. That is usually 100%. So I think it's an amazing tribute, and Christy, congratulations, and Tom and everybody else. It's an amazing job, actually, and it was done very quickly. We officially designated Tren de Aragua, MS-13, and the Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and we're expelling these monsters from our country rapidly and working.
Right about that. Then they go over to Marco Rubio, cut number 31, Secretary of State Rubio.
Something else we got out of the business of wasn't widely reported, or maybe it was. We had an office in the Department of State whose job it was to censor Americans. And by the way, I'm not going to say who it is. I'll leave it up to them. There's at least one person at this table today who had a dossier in that building of social media posts to identify them as purveyors of disinformation. We have these dossiers. We are going to be turning those over to these individuals.
A sense of humor in there. So the Secretary of State says that. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, cut 23.
Mr. President, in the last 4 years, the world experienced a total lack of zero leadership under Biden, and then we've had 100 days of your leadership with respect, with strength, starting with they'll be all hell to pay if you don't let our people go. Dozens, over 40 Americans have come home under your leadership. Far more terrorists are no longer threatening the homeland under your leadership, pulling all of these agencies together, including the evil individual responsible for the Abbey Gate bombing, and to sit with the 13 Gold Star families, and you showing that follow-up and that justice has been incredible. But pulling this great team together, Mr. President, everything from revitalizing shipyards to cyber to space, that takes this entire team working together. It's an honor to serve you in this administration.
National Security Advisor, one of two jobs in the White House that matters. The second is that of Chief of Staff. This is Susie Wiles, cut number 19, at the 100 Days Cabinet meeting.
I'll be brief so you can hear from these amazing people. Congratulations to everyone on 100 days. That's been it's unparalleled in my memory and best I can tell ever. But it hasn't been busy for busy's sake. The president's promises made to the American people have been kept time and time and time again. You all have been out there spreading the word with community groups in the states and media. It hasn't gone unnoticed, and let's work hard to the next 100 and have equally as much success.
And then General Bondi, Attorney General Pam Bondi, spoke up, cut number 14.
President, your first 100 days has far exceeded that of any other presidency in this country, ever. Ever. Never seen anything like it. Thank you. Your directive to me was very simple: make America safe. And despite that, we've still been defending over 200 civil lawsuits filed against you. On top of everything else, I think I'm representing every one of you in this room in some capacity. I know you will not be arrested by the U.S. Marshals. Over 200 lawsuits, over 50 injunctions, and now we've got multiple cases in front of the Supreme Court, and we will succeed, and we are doing great in front of the Supreme Court, President, and we'll continue on with that. I was at DEA yesterday, and they said to me, you, Donald Trump, have taken the handcuffs off of DEA agents. And as a result of
Bessent
you
is the Secretary of Treasury. I want to make sure I got the big five in. Here's a little bit of Secretary of Treasury Bessent, cut number 17.
It's been a momentous 100 days with you at the helm, and I view this 100 days as setting the table for peace deals, trade deals, tax deals. So the next 100 days will be harvesting. You've created negotiating leverage and leadership that are going to yield remarkable results. Energy costs have plummeted. Mortgage rates are down. Food costs are moving lower. And American families are finding their financial footing again. I had a group in today. America, under your leadership, is on the verge of becoming an AI superpower, that our economy had become barbelled. We had high tech and finance on one side, natural resources led by energy, which the previous administration tried to kill, on the other, and you're filling in between with precision manufacturing that we're going to be bringing back through good trade policies, good tax policies. Under the DOGE at Treasury and the IRS, cost, tech support, and efficiency have increased. We have the IRS revenues are up, and thanks to the young man sent over by DOGE, the IT update that began in 1990 which was begun before he was born, is going to be finished during your term. So trade, you couldn't make it up. Trade, taxes.
You
and
can't make it up.
deregulation.
They inherited this dilapidated, completely dysfunctional federal administration. After 100 days, it's clicking, everything is moving. That is great news. I got more on the Supreme Court argument coming up today. I've got updates on the economy, on the war in Syria that's getting precariously close to Israel's borders, bringing it all up to speed on the fires in Israel as well. Today in the United States Supreme Court, a case was argued. Oklahoma statewide charter school board versus Drummond. And it's an important case because it's an application by a Catholic school for public charter status. I believe it's an easy case. I believe that after the last 10 years of free exercise cases, it'll be 6-3 in favor of the Roman Catholic school given their charter. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt had this to say before the case was argued, cut number 34.
We think this is the biggest religious and education freedom case in our history. And why do we pretend that a parent doesn't want to put their values in their kids? And I use the example also of like Medicaid dollars. If there's a public benefit, you can't discriminate based on someone's religion. So in other words, you can go to a Catholic hospital, you can go to a Muslim doctor, you can go to a Christian doctor. Education shouldn't be any different. If a charter school qualifies just because they're Catholic, you shouldn't discriminate against it. And that's what we believe in Oklahoma. And you don't have to send your kids there. That's the other thing. This is just another choice for families and parents.
And he, by the way, Kevin Stitt just absolutely accurately stated the law. When a public benefit is available, Trinity Lutheran, Espinoza, this case has been litigated again and again, then bureaucrats may not pick and choose who wins and who loses based on their religious identity. In fact, today, the Chief Justice Roberts, asked the school board that turned down the application, what about our precedents? Cut number 35.
What do you do with Fulton? You have a state agency that refused to deal with the religious adoption services, and we held they couldn't engage in that discrimination.
Sure.
How is that different from what we have here? You have an education program, and you want to not allow them to participate with a religious entity.
He's absolutely right. And they're talking, by the way, with a lawyer named Gregory Garr, who is representing the black hats here, the people who want to throw the Catholics out of the system. Justice Kavanaugh follows up, cut number 36.
I don't think you're a little far afield, I think, from the Chief's question, at least as I understand it, because I think a concern here is that religiously operated senior homes or food banks or foster care agencies or adoption agencies or homeless shelters, many of which get substantial funding from the government, would potentially, under your theory, this is the concern, become state actors and thus not be able to exercise their religion. So can you explain why the principle that you're articulating would not have that result?
And he goes on, Brett Kavanaugh, cut 39.
Religious school is saying is don't exclude us on account of our religion. I mean, if you go and apply to be a charter school and you're an environmental studies school, or you're a science-based school, or you're a Chinese immersion school, or you're a English grammar-focused school, you can get in. And then you come in and you say, oh, we're a religious school. It's like, oh, no, can't do that. That's too much. That's scary. We're not going to do that. And our cases have made very clear, and I think those are some of the most important cases we've had, of saying you can't treat religious people and religious institutions and religious speech as second class in the United States. And when you have a program that's open to all comers except religion, no, we can't do that. We can do everything else. That seems like rank discrimination against religion. And that's the concern.
Because it is rank discrimination against religion. Justice Alito summed up, cut 44.
I want to give you a chance to respond to an argument that is made by the petitioners, and that has to do with the motivation for the position that provided the prompting for the decision that you're defending here today. This is what the Attorney General of the state said in an opinion, an official opinion of the Attorney General when he changed the position that his office was going to take. So these are not extemporaneous comments. While many Oklahomans undoubtedly support charter schools sponsored by various Christian faiths, the precedent created by approval of the application will compel approval of similar applications by all faiths. I doubt most Oklahomans would want their tax dollars to fund a religious school whose tenets are diametrically opposed to their own. And this is not an isolated statement. There are many.
So thank you for asking.
Isn't that a masterpiece? Isn't that a very serious masterpiece cake shop problem? This whole position that you're defending seems to be motivated by hostility toward particular religions.
Yeah, he's right. One more from the Chief Justice, cut number 41.
I don't understand really this created and creature of the state. The pavement or wood chip program in Trinity Lutheran was created and controlled by the state, yet we held that you couldn't exclude religious schools. The tuition program in Espinoza, the creature and created by the state, yet you couldn't exclude religious participants. The same in Carson, the same in Fulton. Is your test, it's a creation and creature of the state? Because all of those were, and we held that under the First Amendment, you couldn't exclude people because of their religious belief.
Now, I don't know why over at SCOTUS blog, the headline says that we can't tell who's winning because I played for you Roberts and Alito and Kavanaugh. I'll play some Gorsuch afterwards. Haven't heard anything from Amy Coney Barrett. Maybe Dwayne can find something from Amy Coney Barrett that would suggest she might be other than on the 5. Justice Thomas is going to be correct on this. He always is. He gets the religious liberty cases correct all the time. This is not a hard case. There should have been a grant. Charter school should have been stood up. Should have been stood up right away. They should have pointed to Espinoza and Fulton and Trinity Lutheran and Carson. The grand slam of religious liberty decisions that have come down over the last 10 years, all of which say, if you're going to run a program that bestows a government benefit on some people, you've also got to make it available to people who are organized by their faith tradition. And if you don't want to give away a government benefit, you don't have to. But if you give away a government benefit, you can't single out people of faith and say that they're not allowed to have that government benefit. Do I have time to toss in here Neil Gorsuch, cut 37?
Drill down on that a little further, too, if it's all right. So in Fulton, you had Catholic charities, which had to be incorporated. It was incorporated, separately incorporated under state law, and could only provide adoption services with incredible oversight from the city. I mean, they can't take foster children in. They can't place them without comprehensive governmental involvement. What's the difference? How do we draw that line so that we capture public schools on your account, but we don't capture?
You can't. And now I know why Amy Coney Barrett, I just remembered, she recused herself from this case. I don't know why she's not. So it's an 8-justice case. I expect it to be a 5-3, maybe a 6-2 decision because Justice Kagan's got to come around to common sense on this too. I was just reading through my American Legislative Exchange Council newsletter. You can get it as well if you sign up at alec.org/Hugh, ALEC.org/Hugh. And if you want the Rich States, Poor States, just go there, richstatespoorstates.org, and Jonathan Williams will personally hand pack and deliver your copy of richstatespoorstates.org. They're very proud of it. But in the newsletter today, 2 new developments. Georgia Governor Kemp, hope he runs for Senate, but that's not in the development, signed a multifaceted tort reform package, SB 68. He signed into law last week several of the provisions in SB 68 that run parallel to Alex model policies on tort reform. That brings down the cost of everything in a state when you bring down the cost of tort litigation. Way to go, Brian Kemp. Indiana has a new governor, Mike Braun, and Indiana added work requirements to their Medicaid eligibility program sent to Governor Braun for signature. It's SB 2, brings transparency and accountability to the Health Indiana program, HIP, by requiring regular evaluation of eligibility in Indiana. Medicaid there has grown by $5 billion in the last 4 years. That rate of growth is not sustainable with Indiana's revenues. So they are putting in place work requirements. If you're going to get Medicaid, you're going to be working at something in Indiana. Good for them. To learn more about your states, go to richstatespoorstates.org. I want to go back to Justice Alito talking about, again, we're talking about the Drummond case. The Oklahoma Charter Board said to a Catholic school, St. Isidore, good by us, you look like you're ready, good to go. Sort of the parochial school of my youth, good to go. And then their attorney general said, no, that's an illegal establishment of religion. And that's before the court, but only 8 justices of the court because Justice Barrett has recused herself from the case, not sure why. Justice Alito had this to say from the bench, cut number 45.
Statement after statement by the Attorney General that reeks of hostility toward Islam. And then we have the provision of the Oklahoma Constitution on which the Oklahoma Supreme Court relied that has its own unsavory discriminatory history. Would you at least agree with that?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. That wasn't motivated by the Blaine movement?
No, it wasn't, Your Honor. And you know, members of the Oklahoma Supreme Court has explained that. The brief from the legal historians explains that. It was motivated by clauses that predated the Blaine amendments, as well as motivated by the Sequoia Constitution and the results of the Christianization of Americans. That's all laid out historically. This case, too, Oklahoma came into the Union in 1906, and the revision you're referring to is 1907, which is, you know, long after the Blaine amendments and the Montana Constitution. So no, it's not a Blaine amendment. And again,
I think you're rewriting history. Do you think that anti-Catholic bigotry had disappeared from Oklahoma by 1907, or what's more pertinent, from the Congress of the United States from 1907?
I think, Your Honor, of course there were those who held that distasteful and odious bigotry. But the laws that the Oklahoma Constitution provision is based on long predated that. And I don't think that the court could treat any prohibition on funding that's similar as simply motivated by bigotry, and so we're not going to respect it. If you did, then I think, you know, frankly, the Establishment Clause jurisprudence with respect to public schools would come tumbling down. And I think, as to Masterpiece case, I just want to make this clear. The Attorney General was not involved in the creation of the charter school system. He wasn't involved in the application in this case, so there's no Masterpiece component. In fact, the application was approved. And I think if your concern is the treatment of Islam or Muslims, then the concern should be the Muslim family whose only practical option is the religious charter school that happens to teach the Catholic faith as truth.
Why would that be? Why would that be the only option of such a parent? The parent could always send his or her child to the schools that you characterize as the public schools.
So, first of all, there are jurisdictions in the country, New Orleans being the main one, where the only public schools are charter schools. In other jurisdictions, it's 50%, Denver and D.C. There are jurisdictions in Oklahoma where your default public school that you're assigned to is the charter school. You can get out of that, but you got to raise your hand and say, no, I don't want to go to the Catholic charter school. I want to go somewhere else. And that raises the same problem as raising your hand in the public school to say, no, I don't want to participate in prayer today.
No, it doesn't. No, the parent sends in a piece of paper. The kid doesn't have to raise their hand in class. That's a very bad argument. And I don't believe Justice Alito was much impressed by that. The state of Oklahoma is worried about establishing religion by setting up a Catholic school. They got one person to worry about, the pro-Catholic charter school people, Chief Justice Roberts. He raises one question. New consumer cellular customer, and I want to tell you about consumer cellular right now. Go to consumercellular.com/Hugh Hugh, consumercellular.com/Hugh, if I tweak your interest. Number one, their target demo, people over the age of 50. That's their target demo because people over the age of 50 don't consume unlimited amounts of data like game-playing 16-year-old boys. Now, if you've got a couple of game-playing 16-year-old boys in your household, then you're going to want their very inexpensive, by big cellular standard, 2 lines for $60 a month, unlimited data on both lines. But if you're kind of a normal 50-year-old and you're using a little bit of data to text and you're calling people and occasionally you'll send a picture or check an Instagram or a Facebook account, then you need 8 gigs or less. And those are really inexpensive. Do you even know how much money you're paying? Well, you can have savings without sacrifice. Same great quality, same great speed, same great everything as big cellular, much less expensive. But to get going, you got to get started. Now, the good news, when you call 1-800-411-4454, that's 1-800-411-4454, you'll be talking to a live person within a half a minute. It's really one touch tone away. So a live operator doesn't answer, you get a recorded message. But unlike, for example, the average drugstore message, which is 10 or 12 different prompts before you finally get to a live person, it's one prompt. They just got to know one thing about you, and then you're in the right category in a live operator, who is in America, by the way, an American in America talking to you on consumercellular.com/Hugh or 1-800-411-4454. As soon as you talk to them, you run through what you need. You want to keep your number? Keep your number. Want to keep your data? Keep your data. You want a new number and no data, no contacts coming over? That's fine by them as well. It's all in the setup. It's all in the live person on the other end of the phone. It's all up to you. But really, do you want to waste more money on a cellular plan about which you don't even know what you're paying? Because I know right now, if you're listening to me, you have no idea what you're paying. I know you don't. You don't know what you're paying. So you might as well switch to a company that gives you as good a quality as any of big cellular, absolutely flawless, and save the money, especially if you're over 50 and you don't need unlimited data. But if you need unlimited data, 2 lines, $60 a month, unlimited data. Almost impossible to beat anywhere. If you want an even greater sweetener, if you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh and you use the promo code Hugh, or you mention the promo code Hugh when you call them at 1-800-411-4454, that will get you your second month free. Let me also remind you that Dennis Prager, we hope, will be back in June. And Dennis, if you're listening, Godspeed. We're waiting for that. Cannot wait to hear it. Here's a little touch of Dennis to get you through the day.
Question is, at what age and why and how did you decide to stop blaming your parents for your unhappiness? Because if you don't stop, you're doomed. It's over, baby. It's over. You're just waiting for your funeral.
Luckily, I don't think my kids blame me or the fetching Mrs. Hewitt for anything. But that's a very provocative question. If you're missing Dennis, go to Pragertopia. Now back to my Supreme Court case. Here is the one moment that the Chief Justice gives a little succor to the anti-school choice movement. Here's the Chief, cut number 46.
Thank you, counsel. You rely heavily on in your brief on a number of cases, Trinity Lutheran, Espinoza, Carson. Those involve fairly discrete state involvement. In Trinity Lutheran, they're going to pave the put wood chips on the playground. In Espinoza, it was a tuition credit. In Carson, again, tax credits. I mean, this does strike me as a much more comprehensive involvement. And I wonder what case do you think supports the position with respect to that level of involvement?
There isn't one, not in recent years, but I don't have his answer. I suppose he came up with a lemon test. Neil Gorsuch, cut number 38. Neil Gorsuch, cut
I
number
appreciate
38.
that point. But you've urged us to say public schools are different from other contractors like Catholic Charities in Fulton. And so we need a test, a legal test. Is it LeBron? Is that where you'd have
I
us
think
look?
you can look at, I think that public schools bear all the hallmarks of government entities, and we can go down the list.
Is it creation and control, or are those the correct things that we should be looking at? I know you say we shouldn't look at state action doctrine. I mean, is it those?
I think it's those. I can give.
Okay, I'd like to hear some more on that. Sam Alito, go to Brett Kavanaugh, cut number 43.
The principles, how is it different from a choice program in the sense that no student is compelled to go to a religious charter school? And I would, of course, agree with you if that were the case, that would be a huge problem. No one's compelled to go. You have a choice to go to the traditional public school, or you can go to a charter school of your choice that you can obtain admittance to, or you can go to a private school. No one's being compelled to go to any school. It's just another option that is available.
That is the only question before the court. Does the setup of a charter school that's Catholic on the same standing with a public school that might be ideologically left-wing in the extreme? What's the difference between the two? Well, you'll get a better education at the Catholic school than at the ideologically extreme left-wing liberal secular school. I remember Attorney General Barr, in his memoir, One Damn Thing After Another, argued that the pervasive secular absolutism of the public schools was functionally a religion. It had all the earmarks of religion. It had all the earmarks, in some cases, of a cult when it comes to climate. And began to wonder, when is the court going to speak up? No need to speak up with charter schools that allow people to organize around their religious identity. And that's what the court should hold here, and they should hold here rather rapidly, although I imagine it's an end of June decision, because it's a big picture decision, because if Catholic charter school is permitted in Oklahoma, it will be permitted everywhere in the United States. If it's permitted everywhere in the United States, we're going to save millions of children from illiteracy. I need to take my relief factor. If I got to do it thus far this hour, every first hour, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you see me take it like this. When I take my 4 pills of Icarian and curcumin and resveratrol and omega, and I do it every day on the air, so that if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, listening on the Salem Radio Network, listening to one of our great affiliates, including beginning tomorrow, WBOB in Jacksonville, Florida, you will know that I really do take it every day. I live by it. Got only 4.5 miles in today. I was walking today. The humidity is back. I was not trundling. I was just walking today because I'd done my trundling in the first couple of days. But I got a shout out from someone along the George Washington Parkway. Morning glory from a white SUV, whoever you are. I yelled, evening grace. Don't know if you heard me. You were moving pretty fast. But I get out there because of relief factor, and I want you to know it's the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. I've taken it every day since 10.5 years ago, something like that. Fabulous. It works. Gets rid of the minor aches and pains that accompany exercise and aging. You're definitely doing the latter. You should be doing the former, exercising every day. Whether you're going a mile or 2 miles or 4 or 10 or whatever it is, no matter what the weather is, no matter whether you're going to be a gym rat. Going to talk with Mary Katherine Ham, gym rat. Next hour, find out if she uses Relief Factor. I do every single day. Here's how you get it. You call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800-4, the number 4 and the word relief. Or go to their website and find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day, at relieffactor.com. Let's go to relieffactor.com. Let me close the hour with little Justice Alito talking with the lawyer who wants to shut down the Catholic charter school, cut number 42.
Can a charter school seek to inculcate a secular viewpoint, not just a secular viewpoint, a particular secular viewpoint?
I mean, with respect, I don't know what you mean by that. I mean, to the extent traditional public schools can, yes.
I'll take your example of a school that focuses on music. So could a school that focuses on music teach only the music composed by dead white men? Brahms, Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. and all the rest.
I
Could
think
they do
like
that?
a traditional public school could, but what charter
All right,
schools can't.
Could a school that focuses on music say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to include jazz and hip-hop and rap and music from non-European countries. Could they do that?
I think they probably could do that.
All right. Could a school say, we're going to be a LGBTQ plus friendly school, so that the books that elementary school children are going to read are going to have lots of LGBTQ plus characters, same-sex couples, and they are going to send the message that this is a perfectly legitimate lifestyle. They're going to tell the little kids, your parents may say you're a boy or a girl, but that doesn't mean you really are a boy or a girl. Could they do that?
No. And the reason why they couldn't is because state law prohibits the teaching of gender studies or race in public schools, traditional public schools and charter schools. And that reminds me.
I'll give you another example.
Okay, hold on. We're going to come back to Justice Alito because Mr. Gare is losing the arguments. The markets have closed, so I'll do a market update here in a moment. But the biggest story of the morning was, oh my gosh, the GDP contracted by 0.3%. Now, remember in the Biden years, we had 2 quarters of GDP decline back to back, but that wasn't a recession because it was Democrats. So the traditional definition of a recession is 2 quarters of negative growth. So we might be in a recession, a parting gift by Joe Biden because of president's first 3 months. He's got nothing to do. It's an overhang from whatever the last president did. They're trying to blame Donald Trump's trade policies, but that's not it. It's an overhang from last year. But what did the markets do? The markets closed, so let me check and give you the update brought to you by our friends at American Federal Coin and Bullion. All right, AmericanFederal.com, or you can call them at 1-800-221-7694. My friend Nick Grovich runs it. He's run it for 42 years. They buy and sell gold. They will sell you gold by the ounce, by the quarter ounce, by the 5 ounces, by the gold bar, however you want to buy gold. They also sell you silver. I think they sell platinum. I've never really wanted to buy platinum. Gold is the fungible precious metal, and I think every good portfolio has some gold in it. So if you have some wealth, if you've worked a long time, and you've accumulated some stocks and bonds, you ought to own a little bit of gold and some dirt. And that's a very basic, diversified portfolio. Stocks, bonds, precious metals, dirt, and cash. And then you're prepared for whatever happens in the economy, and you don't have to be a day trader or trust anybody else. You can run your own portfolio. It's like I tell my students in constitutional law, this is not rocket science. The Constitution was written and intended to be read by farmers, for farmers, and trading might be complicated, but investing isn't. Investing is you put in the same amount into the market every month. You might put the same amount into gold every quarter or every year. You try and buy some real estate and make a mortgage payment on every single month for 30 years and pay it off. You might buy a rental property, I don't know. But if you're buying gold, do it from Nick Grovich and his team at AmericanFederal.com. 1-800-221-20... Oh, gosh, forgot the number again because I got too many 800 numbers. 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. Now, today on the market, late turn in the market, the Dow finished up 0.35%. The S&P finished up 0.15%. The NASDAQ was down 0.09%, so technically it's a mixed market. Didn't do much of anything. Gold was down today to $3,304. So if you're waiting to buy on the dip, the last 2 days have been down. That's a dip. I don't know how far down it will go. I don't know how far up it will go. All I know is that at the beginning of the year, Nick sent me a note saying it'll hang around 3,000 for a while and then it'll be bullish. That's Nick's prediction. It's not science. But I did read in the Wall Street Journal today, everybody in China is buying gold hand over foot. And that's because they don't know what's coming with the trade war. That might explain why the price has gone up. But I buy it regardless of price every January. I recommend a very boring approach like that. Pick a date, pick a schedule, call up Nick, get on the schedule, work out with Nick the details. 1-800-221-7694. 7694. Trust the people with whom you do business. You can trust American Federal. Now to the Supreme Court case. I'm going to teach you a little con law here. There's a Wall Street Journal story today that has as its headline, Supreme Court signals willingness to allow religious charter schools. That's different from the headline in SCOTUS blog. And it's different because if Justice Barrett was on the court today, she recused herself, it would be lock, stock, and two smoking barrels solid. The charter school that's Catholic would be upheld. And the most important precedent, there are 4 precedents that they're throwing around. They're throwing around Trinity Lutheran, Espinoza, Carson versus Mackin, and Fulton versus City of Philadelphia. 3 of those are rather obscure and deal with benefit programs or the exercise of discretion by a state official. The 4th one's pretty easy. State of Maine got a lot of empty ground up in Maine. A lot of counties, like the county, which is the farthest north county, don't have high schools. And when they don't have high schools, their solution is, high school is pretty expensive to build. We're going to give you a voucher. Take this voucher and send your kids to high school wherever you want. They go to Phillips Andover. They can go to Phillips Exeter. They go to St. Paul's. They can go to any school. Pick a school. Provided, in the old days, up until the case was heard 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, provided that it's not a religious school. So that was their big deal. Here's the money. We don't have high school. We'll pay for your kids' education. Send them anywhere you want. Can't send them to a religious school. Well, that's blatantly unconstitutional. It's a discrimination against people who wanted to send their kids to a religious school. And it was a public benefit that was being denied to people on the basis of their religious belief. So they didn't get to go. So Oklahoma comes along and they throw in with the public charter movement. Big time, good for them. Now, Oklahoma is all Republican. I think there might be a Democrat or 2 left down there, but it's all Republican. So this is a red-on-red violence. The Republicans are fighting with the Republicans. The governor and the charter school board wanted to grant charter status to a Catholic school that's starting from the ground up, St. Isidore. I confess I don't know who St. Isidore is. I'm sorry, St. Isidore. Have mercy on my soul. And help the conclave elect the right pope, at least one who's not anti-American, please. And St. Isidore applies, and they get approval from the charter board. Because it's like Carson v. Macon. It's just going to run a Catholic school, and the kids in Maine got to go to Catholic school, so the kids in Oklahoma get to go to a Catholic school. And everything was going along fine. And then the Attorney General, a man named Drummond, whose career is over, he says some very intemperate things. Oh, do you really want to have a Muslim school going? Huh? How about that? What if the Jews show up? He didn't say that exactly, but it's basically that. Those Catholic, they're camel's nose under the tent. And this infuriates a bunch of people. And I played all last hour the various arguments about it. The best one is Brett Kavanaugh, cut 39.
Religious school is saying is don't exclude us on account of our religion. I mean, if you go and apply to be a charter school and you're an environmental studies school, or you're a science-based school, or you're a Chinese immersion school, or you're a English grammar-focused school, you can get in. And then you come in and you say, oh, we're a religious school. It's like, oh, no, can't do that. That's too much. That's scary. We're not going to do that. And our cases have made very clear, and I think those are some of the most important cases we've had, of saying you can't treat religious people and religious institutions and religious speech as second class in the United States. And when you have a program that's open to all comers except religion, no, we can't do that. We can do everything else. That seems like rank discrimination against religion.
Yeah, because it is rank discrimination against Catholics. Now, the Chief Justice is I teach my law students this, on the one hand, on the other hand. Here's on the one hand, cut number 35, the Chief Justice.
What do you do with Fulton, you have a state agency that refused to deal with the religious adoption services, and we held they couldn't engage in that discrimination?
Sure.
How is that different from what we have here? You have an education program, and you want to not allow them to participate with a religious entity.
No, and then the Chief Justice does, on the other hand, cut number 46.
Thank you, counsel. You rely heavily in your brief on a number of cases, Trinity Lutheran, Espinoza, Carson. Those involve fairly discrete state involvement. In Trinity Lutheran, they're going to pave or put wood chips on the playground. In Espinoza, it was a tuition credit. In Carson, again, tax credits. I mean, this does strike me as a much more comprehensive involvement. And I wonder what case do you think supports the position with respect to that level of involvement?
Now, my answer to that is the case you just cited, Mr. Chief Justice, Trinity, Espinoza, Carson, and Fulton. They're all trending towards the same position, which was the position of our framers, which is we will not burden the free exercise of religion, and when government begins to award a benefit, it's not going to defy the benefit. In this case, the opportunity to start a charter school to people based upon their religion. I hope he answered that way. Doesn't really matter. The Chief Justice is just displaying that he has a grasp on both sides of the case. I think they're going to win this case. So does the Journal. A little bit more skepticism. Joined by Mary Katherine Ham, she of Getting Hammered fame. She is also a grits girl. I learned by listening to Getting Hammered this week that you are a grits connoisseur. Mary Katherine, here we must divide. I do not believe grits ought to be on any menu in the United States, period, ever. When did this even get into the United States food supply? Don't we think Secretary Kennedy can get it out?
This is authoritarian nonsense, Hugh. The grits are delicious. Why would you not want to eat them? Is it a texture thing? It's just
the first time Jill Eastland tried to give me grits and they came right out. I said, why don't I just go out and get some gravel on the driveway and chew that? But I will move on. Grits, there's a reason grits is only in the South. It's because after the Civil War, there was nothing else to eat in the South, and so you ate grits. I do not know how it travels, though. Mary Katherine, you didn't have a roommate as a freshman at the University of Georgia?
No, I did. I had a roommate.
Oh, I misunderstood the podcast then. I thought you were saying that you were a gym rat because you didn't have any friends in Georgia.
No, I didn't have any friends, but I did have a roommate, and my roommate was actually very nice, but we were not interested in the same things. So, such that I had friends, she was my buddy, but it was like, by force. I didn't have any organic friendships at that time. She was very nice to me, though.
Were you a sorority girl at Georgia?
I was not. I was actually very confused when I got to the University of Georgia and did not get there in time for Rush, but got there for the end of Rush and saw women weeping in the elevators about where they did or did not match. And I was so confused by this because I had not been introduced to Greek culture at all at that point in my life.
Are you glad that you missed out on it?
I mean, I just didn't have any money, so that wasn't a possibility for me.
Well, you were working.
Work a job.
You were working.
Yeah.
You were delivering newspapers. I remember that part. Now I want to move to the Catholic conversation you had with Vic. Although first I want to bring up the fact I've never ever heard of anyone going to a sunrise service at a Baptist church and not bringing a hot dish. You really did freeload through that.
I did. You know what? And Christ forgives me, and so does the Baptist church. So we made it.
Did the girls get their fill of donuts?
Oh my gosh. I had to throw a cap on what we were doing at the Baptist buffet, given that especially I had not brought anything with me. So
I found that very amusing. Now I want to talk to you about the Pope, because you and Vic went on a little frolic and detour about the Pope. You didn't bring up the fact, and may he rest in peace, Francis, but he hated America. You know that, right? He really didn't like us.
Well, he also hated capitalism. Like I'm not a huge fan of his ideological bent for sure. I try to be respectful about him, but not a huge fan of that stuff.
So do you think the next one is going to be a correction from that or a progress down the anti-American, anti-free market path?
I do think there has been a global vibe shift, and but that does not necessarily mean that the Cardinals obey the vibe shift, right? However, there's two sides of this, because I know there's truth to the fact that Francis, as Pope, you can sort of stock the Cardinal lineup with your own people and your allies. I think it would serve the world better if there was someone a little more neutral and less negative about capitalism in America. But I'm not a voting party, nor am I Catholic, despite my name, which really throws people off.
It does throw people off because it does sound very Catholic. Now let's talk about the Catholics at the court today. You and Vic talked about last week's blockbuster Supreme Court case about whether Montgomery County is indeed as crazy as it sounds, and your conclusion was, yes, it is as crazy as it sounds. Today, they've been arguing about whether or not Oklahoma can do a public charter school run by the Catholics. And apparently, the Attorney General of Oklahoma was worried about the Muslims and the Jews running their own schools. Mary Katherine, do you worry about private charter schools or public charter schools that are run by religious organizations? I don't.
I don't, because I've had very good experiences with religious schools, and many parents in this country, even non-religious ones, choose to send their children to religious schools because in general, what you get from a religious school is what was normal in a public school in the 1980s and 90s. And that's what people actually want. I actually signed my kids up for more than I ever thought I would, specifically, explicitly religious activities, because those default to normal versus secular activities, which end up becoming swallowed up by the left. So for that reason, I think many non-religious folks would be happy to welcome religious schools into the fold. And by the way, those religious schools, the only thing I'd worry about is that the public part of it would make the religious schools less successful because they'd be bogged down by the public requirements.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about is that they'd be run by Jesuits and therefore they wouldn't be Catholic. And they were being advertised as Catholic, and they wouldn't be Catholic if they were run by Jesuits, sort of like Vic's Georgetown experience. Now I've got to turn to the pressing matter of cafeteria ladies. You had a very nice cafeteria lady. Vic apparently had a prison guard. I'm just curious if cafeteria ladies have changed over the decades. We didn't have them in my Catholic schools because we didn't have a cafeteria. You brought a brown bag. But do you think they've changed, the people who work in cafeterias now?
I haven't visited in a while, but my kids, actually during COVID, a lot of small schools lost their cafeterias because a lot of the smaller vendors who survived by getting big contracts from large school districts didn't have those contracts anymore because they closed the schools for 18 months. So a lot of those little niche industries didn't get put back in. So my kids don't have a cafeteria anymore. They used to. And the lady who ran it was very, very sweet. And she retired. But there will never be anyone as sweet as Miss Regina, who helped me when I was 5 years old to find my kindergarten class.
I personally think, I hope Miss Regina has many years left on this planet. She might be still with us. Do you know?
I do not know, but I hope she is. And if not, she is with the angels for sure, because she was an angel here.
Now, the ladies at Harvard were not particularly nice, and they couldn't cook. I believe it has changed dramatically at colleges now that you've actually got to produce edible fare. Is that your understanding?
Oh, I had fantastic food at the University of Georgia. Now, there were grits on the menu, but you could have other things. And I would argue that a cafeteria run by Southern ladies is probably a pretty good bet for fantastic food. And that is what we had at the University of Georgia and most of my elementary schools.
Well, did you follow the argument today at the court? Have you read up on this? Do you think that the Chief Justice, who went one hand, other hand, do you think he'll come down on behalf of private charter schools, public charter schools that are Catholic?
I have not listened to the argument, so you would know better than I, but I always hope that Roberts ends up on the right side of the issue. And I would not be able to predict this time around with this little information as of yet.
He has been right thus far on every free exercise case. Every one, he's been right on it. Mary Katherine, always a pleasure. Go listen to Getting Hammered for the complete rundown on Miss Regina, Southern Girls, working out as a gym rat as a freshman, and some serious stuff about Pope Francis at Getting Hammered, available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. Getting Hammered, Mary Katherine Ham and Vic Madden. That's a theme song to Dwayne's World, Dwayne's podcast, where he recounts what he didn't produce for me this week. But he's also the spokesperson for myphdweightloss.com, a great sponsor of our program, 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
I have a question about myphdweightloss.com.
Okay.
Are grits involved?
No. Grits are very high in carbs.
What's actually in grits?
Huh?
I don't even know what's in grits other than pebbles, stones.
Well, it's technically grain of some kind, right?
I don't know. You tell me it's inedible.
Grain. Well, I didn't say it's inedible. I mean, you can dump all sorts of molasses and all sorts of sweet stuff to make it go down easier, but it's not what you would want to just sustain yourself on if you're trying to lose weight.
My PhD weight loss, and I agree, grits are not good.
Good is irrelevant. As far as for weight loss, no, that's not what you want to be.
That's what I mean. Grits are not good.
Yes.
Can you just say grits are not good?
I can say it, yes.
Would you?
I've had it, I think, one time, and I kind of miss just normal oatmeal. If
it was a Southern thing that was developed in the aftermath of Sherman's March to the Sea. It's all they had.
I'm not a big fan of collard greens and a lot of other Southern delicacies that I don't get it at all.
So are any of them on myphdweightloss.com?
What?
Or is it anti-Southern?
No, not at all. You can have beef. You can have chicken. They do a lot of barbecue down
chicken?
there. Maybe not fried, but you can certainly have
Probably
it.
not.
You can
No.
you can have it rotisserie. You can have it.
That's not very. I don't think any Southern food is allowed. Actually,
that's not true. You can grill a bunch of stuff and it's good.
Okra.
I'm not a big fan of okra, but that probably
I don't know what
would be
okra
okay.
looks like, actually. It's a Scrabble word to me. Okra. That's all it is to me. So is there a Dwayne's World coming out this week?
There is one this morning, and it's on, the first half is on Trump's 100 days, and then the second half is on the Democrats' 100 days. And it's actually kind of riotously funny. It's pretty good.
The Democrats had a bad 100
They had
days.
a bad 100 days. But you can't talk about one really without talking about the other.
The other one's just David Hogg. That's it.
Well, he made an appearance, yes.
I'm sure he did. I'll bet he did, because that's their 100 days right there, David Hogg. Hey, I want to thank you, Mr. MyPhDWeightLoss.com non-producer, sir. And I will look forward to Dwayne's World, which is everything you don't hear on the Hugh Hewitt Show, because he's not my producer. Let me go back and play for you.
Where'd you get that cut, by the way?
I want to play for you where do I get what cut?
The one you're about ready to play for everybody.
I was listening to Terry Moran and Donald Trump today. Cut number 33, Donald Trump talking with Terry Moran in the office, the Oval Office.
He wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over that.
Wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshopped. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry. But you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshopped? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir. I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS, as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're there
in
now.
your picture.
Terry.
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
We'll take a look.
It's you do such a disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
It's contested.
You know,
I told you that was a great cut.
I've interviewed the president 30 times, and if he's got a fact in mind, by the way, he's right. He's got MS-13. His wife's got the pictures out on the internet, and the wife's pictures have MS-13 on the knuckles. But you're right, MS-13. And if we're proven wrong, ABC can fact check us both, Mr. President. That's how you move forward. But Terry Moran thinks he's going to. It's like trying to get around Wyatt Teller on a polling block. You're pancake if you try and get around Donald Trump on a factual matter about which he has a firm and fixed belief. Selena Zito is my guest. She's in tornado land. How many tornadoes you have last night, Selena?
I don't know. I tell you what, it was one big one that rolled right through our neighborhood.
Now, I was watching the severe weather alert because Warren was in the path, and I was worried about Warren a little bit. Did the sirens go off?
We don't have sirens.
You see, that's the difference between Ohio and Pennsylvania. We're in the 21st century, and we have we had sirens from 1950 forward. You might want to try and get some sirens to alert people to when the tornadoes are coming.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, we didn't have any sirens, so we didn't know it was coming.
How many times have you interviewed the president, Selena?
19.
All right, so we're about. We've interviewed him a lot. I want to play for you a little clip of Donald Trump and Terry Moran and then ask you how you would have proceeded. Cut number 33, Terry Moran and Donald Trump on whether Mr. Abrego Garcia is got knuckle tattoos IDing him in MS-13. Cut number 33.
He wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over that.
Wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry. But you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir. I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS, as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe.
What would you do? I'm just laughing at Terry Moran, who won't let it go, and he's up against the original not gonna let it go guy.
You know, first of all, I would have gone in there much better prepared. Okay, because the symbols on his hands aren't just interpreted as MS-13. They're symbols of MS-13, right? And second of all, he admits that he's not an expert on it. Then don't question someone if you lack the expertise to be able to do the follow-up question.
So if you're in that position, and you have been, and I have been, the president and I have reached an agreement, which is, okay, we're just going to move on here. And I'm going to note my disagreement. And then we move on because I am respectful in that I note we disagree. It's never been an issue. Has it ever been an issue with you?
No, absolutely not. You know, we've had those same kinds of discussions. And to your point, you know there's a disagreement. But if not, you're just sort of stuck in this place, and you're not going to go anywhere. It's complete inertia.
That's what I can't get over. And I think somebody put in, Terry Moran's not a bad reporter. He's not a great reporter. He's been doing the same thing for about 30 years, as you have, and I've been doing it. So we're not bad at what we do. And I'm just curious, did he never learn how to get past confrontation? Because if you can't get past confrontation, you're never going to get anywhere. Moreover, it's a kind of a silly thing to be talking about on a 100 Days interview, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is a silly thing. But unfortunately, what I think, and I think that has been the problem, period, in my profession, is that editors send you in with a directive that you're push them, and I think lately, especially after the White House Correspondents' Dinner, there's a little bit of shame or that they're trying to overcome, so they want to be more strident and look muscular as opposed to moving on in a situation where nobody's going to move on.
I'm glad you brought up the White House Correspondents. After that dinner, I think I would have asked him, Mr. President, do you think the media did a good job covering Joe Biden's infirmity? I think that would have been my opening question, because it would obviously let him take a free shot at the media, or he might have been nice. You don't have any idea what he would say. It would have made headlines, right?
It would have made headlines. He would have gotten what his boss wants, and his boss wants clicks, because that's what our profession is driven by. I'm very terrible at getting clicks because I'm more interested in a politician telling me, answering questions about what people are worried about, right? And sometimes that can be boring, right? So that would have gotten an answer. I suspect that it would have got an answer that was something like, look, I kind of felt bad for the guy in that debate, and I do think that you guys did not do a job of pressing.
It would have been such a good answer. Instead, they're talking about tattoos on fingers. Let me quickly ask you, Selena, the Steelers drafted Will Howard, quarterback from Ohio State. He looks an awful lot like Ben Roethlisberger to me. Are you going to go talk to the kid?
Yeah, he has that farm boy look, doesn't he?
He does, and he's the same size, and the Browns passed him. So I'm just a little bit worried about Will Howard in a Steelers uniform. Put him on your list. I would love for you to get to him first. Try and talk him into leaving.
Well, what do you think of your quarterback?
Shador, I'm happy. 5th round lottery ticket. Supposed to go number 2 overall. President came in behind. I'm happy. We got a full loaded quarterback room. We're good to go. We're ready for the Super Bowl. Don't know about the Steelers, but I am worried about Will Howard going. And you picked up a second Buckeye in Gentleman Jack Sawyer, who's a heck of a defensive end. I hate it when Ohio State Buckeyes go to the Steelers. Selena Zito, thank you. Follow her on her own website, selenazito.com. Follow her on X, reverse the names, Zito Selena, at Zito Selena on X. Don't forget, take your Relief Factor today. I did this morning, got out and did 4. Wasn't running this morning, just strolling along, and the humidity has, I hit the nice 2 days earlier this week in Washington. I thought, this can't be Washington, D.C. It's beautiful. Well, it was back to being 90% humidity today, but that doesn't stop me. Get my miles in. Thanks to ReliefFactor.com. Whether you're running, sprinting, trundling, or just walking, whether you're going to the gym, whether you're going to go for a swim, go for a bike, whatever it is you do, maybe just carrying a 2-year-old around. Some of you do that all day long. Whatever it is that hurts your back or hurts your neck or hurts your elbow, give Relief Factor a try. I carry curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. It works. The only supplement I take every day. Relief Factor, you can order it. $19.95 for the starter pack for 3 weeks, less than $1 a day. Every packet contains omega, icarian, curcumin, and resveratrol, 4 natural supplements. Only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. The only one I recommend, the only one I will endorse, because I do take it every day. Or go to their website. You can call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or go to their website and find the starter pack offer, relieffactor.com. Market was mixed today, and the 10-year Treasury dropped just a touch. To find out what rate you will qualify for, though, depends upon a lot of things. Where are you living? Where are you moving? Are you refinancing? Are you buying a new house? Are you a veteran and therefore don't have to put any money down? Are you a first-time home buyer and therefore qualify for the help that the FHA provides you? All sorts of different things. You need professionals to help you. Go to Sierra Pacific Mortgage. AndrewandTodd.com. They've helped thousands of listeners to the Hugh Hewitt Show over a dozen years. 888-888-1172. I dropped by their offices last week before I left California just to say hi, meet the new team and the old team. A lot of people have been there for many, many years, including Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian, and so cool to see the guys. Now, they've got fancy new offices that are decorated with surfboards. I don't know why. Andrew doesn't surf, Todd doesn't surf, but they're hip, pretty hip offices. What matters is they're very good at doing your loan because they're a bank. They underwrite the loan. They're not a middleman. They're not shopping your loan. They actually underwrite the loan. And they put you in the file so that when and if interest rates drop and it makes sense for you to refinance, it's ridiculously easy to update and refinance. 888-888-1172. But nothing happens until you start with a phone call to Andrew or to Todd or to any of their team at 888-888-1172. And then it moves along very, very quickly. 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172. When I come back, I've asked Dwayne to do a little producing and find me some more excerpts of Terry Moran and Donald Trump. I want to know if the rest of the interview was that bad. Now, Dwayne has cited that he belongs to a union, says he doesn't have to work for the third hour of the show. But we'll see. I found 2 clips myself, but we'll see if he can find 3, 4, 5 clips of Terry Moran. It will be entertaining as the debate over the MS-13 symbols. Big story inside the Beltway today is Terry Moran's interview with President Trump. Now, Terry Moran is 65 years old. Good journalist, been around forever. I knew his brother a little bit. Terry's been a guest on this show before. We sparked it up before, but that's fine. He's pretty good at what he does. So Donald Trump's doing rounds for day interviews, and he invites ABC and he picks Terry Moran to come in. And I'll be talking about this with Jesse Waters later tonight on the Fox News channel on Jesse. But let's run through some of the clips. Here's the first clip. They're talking about China.
Well, you said something a couple weeks ago that struck me. You said concerning the tariffs, which economists say are going to raise prices, you said, quote, hang tough. Yeah. It won't be easy. You said that to the American people. Is that what Americans should expect, some hard times?
I've said that during my campaign. Look, we won a campaign by a lot. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by a lot. We had a tremendous campaign. I said all of these things during my campaign. I said, you're going to have a transition period. We've been ripped off by every country all over the world. They're laughing at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we were. And I said, that's not going to happen. We're not going to let that happen.
Hard times are ahead?
I don't think so. I think great times are ahead. Look, since I came in, gasoline is down, groceries are down, egg prices are down, many things are down, just about everything. You don't have the drop in fuel and energy and oil like we did. I took it from maybe $3.20, maybe more than that, down into a much lower number. When you have that kind of a drop, you're not going to have inflation.
Not now, but it's the tariffs, right? We still have 145% tariffs on China. Your Treasury Secretary said we basically have an embargo on China.
Look, you're trying to say something's going to happen, Terry.
No, okay, well,
nothing's going to happen.
You know business.
Terry,
I want to ask you.
I do know business.
Yes, so 145% tariffs on China, and that's good. Basically an embargo.
They deserve it.
It'll raise prices on everything from electronics to clothing to building houses.
You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going to eat it.
That's mathematics.
China probably will eat those tariffs, but at 145, they basically can't do much business with the United States. And they were making from us $1 trillion a year. They were ripping us off like nobody's ever ripped us off. And by the way, we have other countries that were just as bad. If you look at the European Union, it was terrible what they've done to us. Every country, almost every country in the world was ripping us off. They're not doing that anymore.
So, did you see, Terry started out by saying, hard times coming, instead of, what have you gotten done? And the difference is everything. The difference is hostile versus inquisitive. And Terry wants some sparks. It's probably his last go round. He's 65 years old. Probably the last time he sits down with the president in the Oval. He wants something memorable. And he ends up getting this, cut number 35. No, cut number 33.
He wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over that.
wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was photoshopped. So let me
That
just...
was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry. But you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir.
Terry,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're there
in
now.
your picture.
Terry.
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
We'll take a look at that.
You do such a disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
It's contested.
You don't know how to get out of the cul-de-sac with the President of the United States. Cut number 47.
Do you think the reputation of the United States has gone down under your presidency?
No, I think it's gone way up.
Stop.
I think we're a respected country.
What kind of a question? It's 100 days. A term is 1,141 days. It's 100 days. Do you think the reputation of the United States has gone down? What a bad question. Okay, back to 47.
Again, we were laughed at all over the world. We had a president that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't walk down a flight of stairs, couldn't walk across a stage without falling. We had a president that was grossly incompetent. You knew it, I knew it, and everybody knew it, but you guys didn't want to write it because you're fake news.
All right. Thank you.
And by the way, ABC is one of the worst. I have to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Well, if you're going to step on a rake, expect the rake to hit you in the nose. Cut number 48.
A very good defense, hopefully a great defense secretary, but he'll be a very good defense secretary.
You have
Maybe
100% confidence in
I don't have
Peter.
100% confidence in anything. Okay? Anything. Do I have 100%? It's a stupid question. Look.
It's a pretty important position.
No. You don't have 100%. Only a liar would say I have 100% confidence. I don't have 100% confidence that we're going to finish this interview.
Cut number 49. No, we have to stall on that. Hold on. Wait another 30 seconds. Oh, we got to wait another 30 seconds. We're loading. Dwayne actually woke up and put some things into the machine, but the machine has to, they're like grits. The machine, which we have a very fancy name for, I call it the teleprompter, but it's not. It's a teleporter.
TriCaster.
It's a TriCaster.
Teleporter.
Okay, here we go. Cut number
I want to
49.
start, sure, with the economy, the number one issue for so many people, for just about everybody. It's one of the main reasons that you're back in this office. And now we have this trade war with China that Moody's and other analysts say is going to cost American families thousands of more dollars per year. And there is a lot of concern out there. People are worried. Even some people who voted for you saying, I didn't sign up for this. So how do you answer those concerns?
Well, they did sign up for it, actually, and this is what I campaigned on. I said that we've been abused by other countries at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We were losing $3 to $5 billion a day on trade. We were losing $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year, not sustainable. They were taking advantage of us like they've never. I could have left it that way, and at some point there would have been an implosion like nobody's ever seen. But I said, no, we have to fix it. I've wanted to do this for many years. You know, I had the best economy during my first term. We had a tremendous economy, tremendous success. And we did tremendous numbers of tariffs on, we took in a lot of money from tariffs, China in particular, hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. We had no inflation, as you know. We had an incredible economy. We're given credit for a great economy. But I said, we have to fix this. Otherwise, it's just not self-sustaining.
So I got to go back and play the beginning of that. Just the question, please.
But I want to start with the economy, the number one issue for so many people, for just about everybody.
Stop. I want to start with the economy, the number one issue for so many people. Why not start with, I'm having this interview because of 100 days. How'd it go, Mr. President? Because that would be kind of short, and it would be an open field run, and you could take it down, and then you could go down. So, A, it's not the way I would open the interview. I'd open the interview with a neutral, just like I normally do with most people, give him a shot at bat, give him a free swing, and then go in. But then he continues. Go ahead.
It's one of the main reasons that you're back in this office. And now we have this trade war with China that Moody's and other analysts say is going to cost American families thousands of more dollars
All right,
per year.
so stop.
That is a lot.
I don't know how many of you have heard of Moody's. I know what Moody's is, and other analysts say it's going to cost Americans thousands of dollars. I don't believe that, by the way, because Americans aren't dummy, and they will substitute goods based upon competing prices. So even if prices go up on some goods that are imported, they have an opportunity to do substitutionary purchasing. So it's just not that cut and dried, but it's unnecessarily hostile. And I think you can be probing and do a good interview and find out what's really going on and make some news if you actually start with neutral questions. Mr. President, what are the odds of your having to bomb Iran? Very short question. Mr. President, what are the odds of you having to bomb Iran? I hope that Dwayne has found more of this. We've got all 5 clips that are out there, I think. But I really don't know how they produce these interviews. They're so uniformly bad. All of them, all the time. I don't know how they produce these interviews. I'm reading through the interview. I've got to correct the record. I always correct the record when I say something wrong. I said the first question that Trump-Moran asked was about the economy. It wasn't. It was actually about immigration. He said, thank you, Mr. President, for doing this. Thank you very much, the President says. Here in the Oval Office, it's special. 100 days into your second term. So what's the one thing, just one thing, that you think is the most significant thing you've done in these 100 days? That's a good question. I wish I'd heard that. If I had a producer, I would have heard that. Well, I think maybe the border is the most significant because our country was going really bad, the President says. They're allowing people to come in from prisons, you know, and you've heard me say it. You've heard a lot of people say it. Prisons, mental institutions, gang members, murderers. We had many murderers, 11,888, they think. Some murdered more than one person. So you had murderers coming in, you had everybody coming in, and not just from South America, you had from all over the world. They were emptying the prisons into our country. And now it's totally closed down, the President said. And you just seen that yesterday, announced 99.9%. Nobody thought that could happen. It happened very quickly, very quickly. I think that's very significant. We're doing other things that are very significant. Results will take a little bit longer because it's one of those, you know, it's complicated. Many years of trading abuse. We've been abused by other countries for years and years. They laughed at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we're fixing it. It's going to be very, very important, but we have a lot of ground to cover, Terry says, interrupting. Yeah, I would really say that the border is so important, you know, you just can't. And we'll get there. Immigration is huge. Let that happen, yeah. And we're going to get there. I want to start, sure, with the economy. Now, look, I don't work for ABC. I'm not Terry Moran. If the president is talking about the border, I would ask him, how'd you do that? And then the question I would say is, why did Joe Biden not do that? Because to me, this is interesting. The absolute night and day difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is that the border was wide open and 20 plus million people came in, according to Donald Trump. The lowest estimate is 10 million by people who say it's too high. But the lowest is 10 and the highest is 20. And they came in over 4 years. And then it stopped. So why do you think President Biden and his team let that happen? And how did you stop it? I think that's a very good, objective question. Then I would ask him about what was said at the White House Correspondents Association, that we're not the enemy of the people, and that we missed the story about President Biden. and I would ask for critique of the media. Because if you want to make news, you don't talk about trade, because we don't know where trade's going to be in 100 days. We know the border's shut and is going to stay shut. He spends a lot of time on Abrego Garcia and whether or not he's working to get him back. I can think of nothing. By the way, open up the phones, 1-800-520-1234. What would you have asked the president if you're ABC News and you get to sit down with him for half an hour? He's the best interview in America. I say it every time. There are 1,000 things to ask him. 1,000 things. What would you ask him, and would you argue about the tattoos? Because I just thought that was a cul-de-sac into which I would never drive, whereas I think there are some very obvious questions that you could ask and were not asked and were not answered. I also want to make sure that you hear Sam Alito today at the Supreme Court, cut number 45.
Statement after statement by the Attorney General that reeks of hostility toward Islam. And then we have the provision of the Oklahoma Constitution on which the Oklahoma Supreme Court relied that has its own unsavory discriminatory history. Would you at least agree with that?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. That wasn't motivated by the Blaine movement?
No, it wasn't, Your Honor. And you know, members of the Oklahoma Supreme Court has explained that. The brief from the legal historians explains that. It was motivated by clauses that predated the Blaine amendments, as well as motivated by the Sequoia Constitution and the results of the Christianization of Americans. That's all laid out historically. This case, too, Oklahoma came into the Union in 1906, and the revision you're referring to is 1907, which is, you know, long after the Blaine amendments and the Montana Constitution. So no, it's not a Blaine amendment. And again,
I think you're rewriting history. Do you think that anti-Catholic bigotry had disappeared from Oklahoma by 1907, or what's more pertinent, from the Congress of the United States from 1907?
I think, Your Honor, of course there were those who held that distasteful and odious bigotry. But the laws that the Oklahoma Constitution provision is based on long predated that. And I don't think that the court could treat any prohibition on funding that's similar as simply motivated by bigotry, and so we're not going to respect it. If you did, then I think, you know, frankly, the Establishment Clause jurisprudence with respect to public schools would come tumbling down. And I think, as to Masterpiece case, I just want to make this clear. The Attorney General was not involved in the creation of the charter school system. He wasn't involved in the application in this case, so there's no Masterpiece component. In fact, the application was approved. And I think if your concern is the treatment of Islam or Muslims, then the concern should be the Muslim family whose only practical option is the religious charter school that happens to teach the Catholic faith as truth.
Why would that be? Why would that be the only option of such a parent? The parent could always send his or her child to the schools that you characterize as the public schools.
So, first of all, there are jurisdictions in the country, New Orleans being the main one, where the only public schools are charter schools. In other jurisdictions, it's 50%, Denver and D.C. There are jurisdictions in Oklahoma where your default public school that you're assigned to is the charter school. You can get out of that, but you got to raise your hand and say, no, I don't want to go to the Catholic charter school. I want to go somewhere else. And that raises the same problem as raising your hand in the public school to say, no, I don't want to participate in prayer today.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Garr. I just had one more question. I will study the record carefully, but boy, the way that you portray these charter schools, it doesn't, I don't see what the virtue of the charter schools are. I thought the whole point of charter schools was to offer something different from the so-called public schools. And you've made it sound like, no, they're just going to be exactly like the public schools.
I got to say, this poor guy got chewed up today, and the Chief Justice simply has to decide whether or not to extend the momentum of Trinity, Espinoza, Fulton, and Macon. And that momentum is any public program has to be available to everyone, regardless of their religious affiliation, if there's a benefit, including a full school-in-a-box program. And there's no way out of it. Jason Cleveland, what's your question? What would you have asked if you were on with Terry Moran and the president instead of Terry Moran? What would you have asked?
Well, Hugh, President Donald Trump had a lot of accomplishments in the past 100 days in his first term. And let me tell you, I was a big supporter of his and still am. But I think we have to be honest about something. And
But what would you have asked him? I've only got 30 seconds. What would you have asked him, Jason?
Well, I would have asked him why you want to have an embargo on China. I mean, we got
Okay, that's a good question.
Pharmaceuticals
That's a good
coming
question. That's a fine question. That stated that way without any, it's going to be trouble ahead. Yeah. Do you want to have an embargo on China? I would have asked that question. That's a fair question. No run up, no takeoff, no setup. No, it's going to be hard times ahead. Just why do you want to have an embargo on China? Good question. Joined by Sarah Bedford of the Washington Examiner. Sarah, the president and Terry Moran had an argument about Mr. Garcia. Did you think that was particularly productive in moving the conversation along?
I don't. And I actually think that that might have been detrimental to the Trump administration's case because Donald Trump said in response to a question from Terry Moran that he could bring home Kilmar Abrego Garcia if he wanted to. And the DOJ's entire argument is based on the idea that Trump can't do that, even if he wanted to. So I think that is going to potentially hand some fodder to the left-wing groups that are suing the Trump administration over this. And, you know, when you couple that with the misunderstanding, to put it gently, over the tattoos on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's knuckles, I think this was not a great moment for the Trump administration in this case.
You know, the answer that I would give in court is that the president was ordered to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia. He said he could do that, but he's not going to do that. And the reason he's not going to do that is it doesn't benefit the national security of the United States, and the court can't direct him as to what to prioritize in the national security of the United States. I really don't think that one's going to be a winner. What do you think generally, though, about Terry's demeanor and approach?
Well, you know, I think that it was aggressive, and that's what we've seen from a lot of mainstream news organizations. It raises the question of, you know, why the White House continues to offer access to these journalists who are hostile to the Trump administration, whose goals are to generate negative headlines out of their interaction with Donald Trump, or to appear to their colleagues to have gotten him on certain questions. I mean, I'm not sure how much benefit that is giving to the White House, but you certainly can commend the president for being more open and transparent and more willing to entertain unfriendly journalists than, of course, the previous president.
Well, that's what I think I would have asked is, here we are. I'm from ABC. You call me fake news. Why did the previous president not do this? That would have been newsworthy. I mean, I would have had him tee off on Joe and on Kamala, but I don't know that Beltway media can actually embrace the idea of a straight up question that would be interesting to the public. I really don't think they're capable of doing it.
Well, to slander my own environment, I do think that in the case of the corporate media, what ends up happening is a lot of journalists are performing for each other, not for the public, not to inform people about the administration's agenda, but they want to advance the ball just a little bit on niche issues, or to trip up the president or administration officials in a way that's embarrassing for them and, you know, makes the journalists look good. So I think the incentive structure for journalists is off here, in that they're competing for plaudits from their peers and not to inform the American
people. That might be the case, Sarah, for someone your age or someone who's getting started in the newsletter business, someone who's got to make a career in D.C. Terry's my age, and he's been doing this a long time. He doesn't have to impress anybody. He's at the top of his business. He doesn't have to put on. He might want to conduct an interesting interview. That's my point. Is why not conduct it? Why not ask him about anything other than what everyone else has asked him about? It just was so boring.
Yeah, I mean, I think the herd mentality is strong in the mainstream media. Maybe someone like Terry Moran, as you mentioned, you're right. He is the top of his game. He doesn't need the plaudits of people like me or people who are earlier in their careers. But I do think that groupthink and not straying too far from what everybody else is doing is a big part of what factors into why these journalists all ask about the same things, all pursue the same storylines, and frame everything the exact same way.
Yeah, you know, Sarah, it's someone's going to come along and sit down in the Oval and ask him about each of the presidents on the wall, or ask him about the Winston Churchill bust, or who his favorite high school teacher was, or what it was like to be at the military academy, stuff that biographers would want, as opposed to Abrego Garcia. I mean, I really do not know why we're. Last question to you: do you think Abrego Garcia merits 99.9% closure of the border is a story, particularly since Biden chose not to do it? Mr. Abrego Garcia may or may not have gotten due process. But last word to you: between those two stories, which one interests the American people more?
Well, obviously the border closure story, right? It's what they voted for. It's what they want out of this administration. It's one of the things that he continues to be most highly rated for. The Abrego Garcia case, I think, is going to end up being a black mark for Democrats for having pushed this so aggressively. Chris Van Hollen, senator from Maryland, I think that image of him flying down to El Salvador and advocating for his release is going to come back to haunt him if he has presidential ambitions, because that case is not a poster child for what they want to convey about border security and open borders.
Sarah, perfectly said. Sarah Bedford, follow her at Sarah C. Bedford on X and at the Washington Examiner. Thank you, Sarah. More of your phone calls. What would you have asked the president if you had a half hour to 45 minutes in the Oval with him? I certainly wouldn't have gone the Terry direction. Asking you, I don't often open up the phones. I usually do interviews, but I wanted to ask you, you get 30, 45 minutes with the president on the 100 Days interview, and you're from ABC. What do you ask him? Now, we don't want long. I just want to know, what would you ask him? Phil in Philadelphia, line 1. What would you ask him, Phil?
Hey, thanks for taking the call, I would ask, will the White House open an investigation who face stocks 20 of our Middle Eastern operatives to get Biden in and out of Israel safely after 10/7? As you remember, not one bullet, one missile was fired when he was over there on the 18th of October. When he came back, they face stocks 20 of our Middle Eastern operatives. What's that about?
I have no idea what you're talking about, so I don't think I would have asked him, but fine. Thank you, Phil. Tom in Atlanta.
Hey, Hugh, thanks. I would be Trump asking Moran the question. You've had 100 days to ask me this question. The media, no one has, but I'll give you the chance. What is my favorite ice cream flavor? Oh, never mind. I'll tell you, it's Rocky Road.
No, I think the president would have been jocular with anybody, and that would have been funny, but it would have been abusive of the former president. I would have asked, quite frankly, though, about the White House Correspondent Association dinner and the statement that we missed it. Do you think they missed it, Mr. President, or did they cover it up? That is actually something to get your teeth into. They could have talked for 90 minutes about American media and made a little history. As it is, it will be forgotten. Thank you, Tom. Mike in Lakewood, California. Hey, Mike, 1-800-520-1234 is the phone number of the Hugh Hewitt Show, 1-800-520-1234. Go ahead, Mike. Hello, Mike. Yep, you're gone. Annabelle in Palo Alto. Hi, Annabelle.
Hi, Mr. Hewitt. It's not exactly a question. It's what I would have said if I were Trump, and it would have shut down a lot of the subsequent questions and subjects. I would have, when Terry Moran asked him, I forget what's your biggest achievement, or I think what he said was the border, the economy is what people voted for, why you won. I would have said basically that my main focus is to keep my promises to the American people, and that all of my decisions, I know, will ultimately be fruitful in that pursuit.
Well, I think you got around to that, but I'm really looking for an audience perspective on journalism in America, which is broken. And it's broken because it is unnecessarily adversary towards Republicans and completely in the bag for Democrats. And there's just no ands, ifs, or about. Thank you so much, Annabelle. Frank in L.A., what do you say, Frank?
Hey, you, I'd sit down. If I had 35 minutes, the first question I would ask would be, Mr. President, you've pretty much done what you were campaigning on, or you're doing what you campaigned on in your first 100 days. What's your plan for the next 100?
Okay, that's actually a good question, which is, okay, you've run through every executive order you can possibly sign. He would have gone to the big, beautiful bill. And I would have asked him a little bit about the big, beautiful bill and the SALT tax and the Social Security exemption and whether or not there's a way to raise the money. A lot of good questions. Going back over Abrego Garcia is not one of them. Thank you. Tom in Scottsdale, Arizona. How are you, Tom?
I'm doing well. Great to have you on the afternoon hour.
Oh, I'm so glad to be back on in the afternoons in Phoenix.
I would ask the president, have you or your team learned anything that would lead you to believe that the assassination attempt was a lone wolf or a group or a government?
Now, you see, that is fascinating. I would have actually, if I'd table work this, do a table read with 8 or 9 people, I'll bet you, I've been to these at these networks. It would never have occurred to everyone that everyone in America would like to know what you just asked about both of those guys. One of them is alive, one of them's head's blown off. But what has Cash told you about those 2 attempts? And by the way, are you afraid the Iranians are trying to kill you still? Good idea. Thank you. Rick in Little Rock, Arkansas. Hello, Rick.
Hello there. I just wanted to ask the president, since he's going to give anybody, a reporter, access to him, why does he keep lying to the American people? Why? Just why do you
what are you
keep
going to
lying?
ask him? What are you going to ask him?
Why does he keep lying to the American people?
So, Rick, you think that's a good question?
Blatantly ask him.
Do you think that's a good question? Do you think that's a good? You do.
Yes, I do, because I'm a voter.
You need to be in a different business.
Absolutely.
Yep.
He
Yes.
lied.
Absolutely. You need to be in a different business. But I appreciate the call, Frank. I somehow think he didn't tell Harley that. Hello, Frank.
Hey, I would ask the president about addiction and fentanyl, and he lost a brother to addiction and how it changed him. And
Great question. That's a great question. That's far, far above our average journalist understanding what would actually matter 20 years from now to an autobiographer or to a biographer, or 30 years or 50 years, figuring out what happened to Fred and how it impacted him. He's talked about it a little bit, but it's definitely a mine that they could have gone down and would have been very, very productive had they done so. You could be a journalist, Frank. The previous guy could not be. Thank you. Thank you very much. 1-800-520-1234. I might take a couple more after this. I want to remind you, if you missed anything today, Mary Katherine or Selena or Sarah or anybody else, you can go to my YouTube channel, like and subscribe. Hugh Hewitt, YouTube, like and subscribe. We're pushing up against 90,000 people. I got to get 10,000 more of you people so I can get a plaque and hang it in my studio and have Dwayne look at it every day, because Dwayne's World's so far away. You can like and subscribe to Dwayne's World too, but it's going to take you a long time. Let me also remind you, Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I take it every day. I want you to know that wherever you are, no matter what the weather is, it's good for you, whether you're an indoor or an outdoor person. Some of you are getting the sticks out. Some of you are getting ready to start playing golf again. It's May. Your internal clock says, I saw the Masters on TV. They can play golf in Georgia. That means in 2 weeks they can play golf in Tennessee. In 2 weeks after that, they can play golf in Kentucky. And 2 weeks later, they're playing golf in Ohio. So go and get your Relief Factor before you swing the sticks. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or head over to their website, relieffactor.com, find the starter pack, $19.95. Play golf without even a worry about how your backswing feels. Play golf like you've never had an ache or pain in your life. Try Relief Factor for 3 weeks, $19.95 at relieffactor.com. And then call me, 1-800-520-1234. What would you have asked President Trump if you had been Terry Moran? Tune in to Jesse Waters tonight. I'll be joining him, surely talking about the Terry Moran interview, or non-interview. Kind of a weird thing. Teresa in Portland, Oregon. What would you have asked Donald Trump if you had 30 minutes with him?
Well, I started out with your question person about Social Security and Medicaid for us elderly folk, especially the single ones, but also any of our income being taxed. Like I lost my husband, but I have spousal income, and I have to pay a fortune. Right now, I'm going to lose my home that I've had for a decade because I can't afford to keep it anymore. So that means I will be homeless. And then they have spousal income tax. They wiped it out.
The new bill is going to stop tax on Social Security.
Okay, and spousal income, they stopped it 4 years after I got my divorce decree, so
Okay, Teresa, that's a particular case, not what I'm looking for, but I hope you don't lose your house. Gerald in Arizona. Hi, Gerald.
Now it's Daryl, but that's close enough. My question would be, close enough, that counts in hand grenades. With the pace that China is building up its Navy compared to what our shipyards are being able to put out, I would ask President Trump, is there any way you can use the tariffs to stop that, or to really put a choke on them and slow their massive Navy buildup?
I think people think I'm nuts about the Navy. I always ask presidential candidates in debates about the Navy, but I think I would have asked that question, and it would have been well asked, and that's a serious question for serious times. So that would not qualify for ABC. Thank you, though, Gerald. Frank, L.A. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, President Trump described the Iraq invasion as the worst foreign policy blunder in the history of the country. Why would he then even entertain the idea of getting into a war against Iran, which is a much stronger foe, has more weapons, and has better allies?
You want to argue with him? What's the question?
Yeah, why is he even entertaining a war, of bombing Iran? Why is he even considering
That answer is pretty obvious, because they can't have a nuclear weapon. So what's the follow-up?
Nuclear weapon. Yeah, no, they can't have a nuclear weapon. They can have it for just to help energize the country, because.
They're trying to build a nuclear weapon. Frank.
You know, we've heard about the same thing about Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi.
Okay, so if you're not open to the argument, you're not open to the argument. But the answer is because we know, and the world knows, that you don't enrich uranium to 60% unless you want to build a nuclear weapon. That's not debatable. But I mean, if you want to do a counterfactual with what we know on the ground, get online and talk to the people that don't want to bomb Iran, because they all say the same thing, but it's not true. They're building a bomb. They're religious fanatics. I would have spent the whole interview on it, by the way, Frank, and I might have answered some variant of your question, but it would have been grounded in reality. All that having been said, watch tonight on Jesse. We'll see what we say about Terry Moran, and I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.